my name's Harry Hurd. I'm head of marketing at Zedify. I joined the business just over 2 years ago now. So the quite a small team then, only four, kind of part of the starting team after having a small round of seed funding. And so my role has really been about kind of setting up the whole marketing function for the business and trying to kind of establish what our positioning and our brand messaging is and how we're going to grow the business and our strategy for getting in front of as many relevant businesses as possible. So Zedify, we're a sustainable urban delivery company. So we do the parcel delivery within cities, whether that's, doing it for kind of parcel carriers. We might be, doing deliveries for people like FedEx and people like Every. So they're kind of big parcel carriers that do kind of shipping all over the country. And we just do that bit within the city for them. Or we work with big retailers like Zara. So we go and get the parcels from them and then in EV from their kind of regional distribution hub, and then we take them into the city and deliver them from our kind of edge of city hubs. Or we might work with local independent businesses within a city. So, like it could be a dental lab or an optician's or a cheese shop or a brewery, a coffee roastery, that kind of thing. And they might want to ship either just to customers within the city or they might want to ship out. And we can do that first mile. So pick it up from where they're manufacturing or their shop and then take it to the hub where it can be picked up by a bigger vehicle and taken kind of into city. And I guess the whole purpose of that is all about trying to protect the city from having these big polluting vehicles, which make city streets congested. They make them unsafe for pedestrians and cyclists. And obviously there's a real problem around air quality and then carbon from transport within the cities. So that's kind of what we're all about. And our mission is really about better cities. So our strap is all about better deliveries for better cities. And that's kind of what our focus is.
What about the results you might have in Scotland or more generally in the UK, if that's a bit too precise? You did mention that we're implanted in Glasgow. I believe in Edinburgh as well. Do you know about other cities in Scotland?
You mean, are we planning to expand across Scotland?
Maybe.
Is that the question? Yeah, so I think there's a lot to be done kind of in Glasgow and Edinburgh kind of to start with. So we've been part of quite an interesting project in Edinburgh where we worked with Sestran, which is a government funded organisation with kind of EU funded project looking at our model and how you could kind of make it work specifically for Edinburgh with all of the, the very kind of hilly terrain, all of the challenges that you have kind of dealing with the makeup of different cities. And that was comparing Edinburgh with other European cities and seeing what projects have worked there. I think there's kind of lots of growth to happen there. With the cities that we're looking at expanding kind of in the short term we have a bit of a gap in the middle between some of the kind of southern base. So we're in Bristol, we're in London, we're in Norwich, in Southampton, in Brighton, and Cambridge. But then we kind of leap all the way up to Glasgow and Edinburgh. So the kind of next expansion plan is really around kind of Manchester and that kind of in Leeds and maybe Oxford and Bath, and those are kind of the cities that are on our in our sights for the next part. And it's about kind of providing as much coverage to our target market as possible.
How easy or difficult is it for your team to convince businesses, professionals, or even individuals to use and support your service instead of more traditional delivery services?
So there's definitely barriers there. I think it's fair to say, and that's definitely one of the challenges that we have to face. I think there's a kind of a slight starting with just not having ever come across them before, to maybe kind of thinking, well, can they cope with what I need? Seeing that they're a smaller profile vehicle, that they're essentially pedal assist, so that's like it's like a human, and then smaller batteries. I think there's lots of stuff there. People just go to a van because it's kind of the go-to option. I think with all these things, when you see that kind of adoption of change, it's really interesting. I think compared to when I first started at Zedify and over the last couple of years, there's been some really important moments, I think, for the sector and for kind of cargo bikes as a mode for cities. We've had, Amazon investing in cargo bike logistics and micro hubs. They've got something in London and in Manchester. You have, some of our big parcel carrier partners who are saying, okay, this really works. This saves us money. This really helps us kind of keep our customers happy and really demonstrate amazing carbon savings. We've got to invest in this. And how are we going to do that? We can partner with somebody who's already doing it, because it's a tricky thing, I think, to get right if you kind of don't have the skill sets. It's quite a different thing, running a fleet of essentially bikes and, you know, the type of staff that you're going to hire for that, riders versus, you know, drivers. I think there's been, you know, so it's kind of maybe challenging for businesses that are used to having that kind of setup for their logistics. So yeah, there are certainly challenges, but I think there's a need with retailers. They're one of our biggest markets, and I think there's a real need for retailers right now. You know, clothing and fashion is probably one of the, you know, biggest opportunities in terms of the volumes of parcels that are whizzing around every day in our cities. You know, obviously post-pandemic, we've seen e-commerce, you know, there's a massive spike, but we've continued to see a real kind of growth. And I don't think we're ever going back to people shopping in shops in the way they did before. So there's a problem there to be fixed. And I think for those retailers, it's not necessarily that they're seeing their consumers willing to pay more for a sustainable delivery service, but I think there's a pressure there to be seen to be doing something really noticeable, really kind of tangible, proven for their investors, and essentially for consumers as well, to be able to say, yes, we are acting on this, we're doing something to really address the way that we operate and what impact that has on climate change and sustainability in general.
And is that something that businesses you work with tend to advertise?
Yeah, I think it depends on who they are, but I think for some people, certainly when we work with, you know, there are some really nice bits, I think, with some of the clients that we have where potentially, you know, the product that they sell or their whole kind of way of operating is all about kind of what kind of point of difference they can offer in terms of their sustainable. So we have a grubby or a vegan meal kit service that deliver out, and, you know, their customers arriving on a bike is just absolutely, you know, core to their message. And we work with some circular economy clothing companies like hire rental companies that, you know, that they've kind of come under pressure. I think, is your model really more sustainable than buying and throwing away? Well, this, one of the biggest elements of that is kind of how is it transported? So I think, yeah, there's certainly that. And I think the moment we're on this kind of cusp of it becoming adopted more commonly, but it's still quite novel. So I think for some people, it's a really nice message to be able to shout about. And certainly kind of when they launch with us, it's something that they like to be able to talk about doing.
Do you think that regulations from the UK government or the Scottish government tend to support initiatives like the ones promoted by Zedify? And do you think could anything be done in order to facilitate the work of Zedify in Scotland specifically, or in the UK more generally?
So I think, you know, obviously one of the things that we're seeing is access restrictions coming into play in larger cities, whether that's a kind of, you know, a levy put in place for a clean air zone, that kind of thing. That obviously does help. There are kind of moves towards, you know, kind of pedestrianised and cycle-only streets, which have, you know, lots of co-benefits around kind of increased spend from the footfall that you get within those streets. So there's a really, you know, there's lots of things that can be done. I think one of the things we really want is a whole kind of systems-wide approach. Don't just kind of try and tackle one thing. These are complex things when you're talking about, you know, all of the different kind of transportation that's going on in a city, which encompasses logistics, you know, last mile, first mile shipping. But it's not just that on its own. You need to think about that in terms of how people are getting around as well, and kind of building space in for that. So all of the moves towards, I think it's a really nice thing. You know, there's lots of overlap between maybe what we're trying to do and what companies like, you know, micromobility kind of scooter brands are trying to do within cities. And it's kind of making space for that. So I think cities and authorities and governments need to think about planning quite a lot. That's something that we talk about. It's the infrastructure for the cycle lanes, making sure that they're set up really well for not just cyclists, but also, you know, cycle logistics firms. They tend to have a wider profile, the bikes. And then thinking about, you know, space allocated for these micro hubs. So that's one of the biggest challenges we have launching a city, is finding that space. And I think, you know, being able to do that is, you know, kind of getting support for that during the planning process and thinking about how how they can build that into cities is really important. But I think, yeah, essentially, I think it's putting, maybe there needs to be a little bit of pressure on business. And I think that's certainly coming from these clean air zones. So I think that, we're very supportive of those because they do provide that little push that help people kind of think about it. Okay, well, it's now the time where I can think about, going for an EV fleet or working with a company like Zedify or, thinking about, not necessarily putting a heavy goods vehicle into the city, which just has so many problems and so many issues for people living there.
What does it mean for you personally to be part of a business, with such a positive impact on the environment?
I think, I guess I've kind of looked for something like this right at the start of my career, and then it's been lucky, kind of done different things, worked in kind of circular economy and recycling, and then this is my first kind of logistics space. But yeah, I think when you do marketing, it's really, you're writing words every day, with what you do. It's really, when you're interested in something or you think that it's, it's kind of pushing forward something worthwhile, it's so much easier. The words just come really easily and you feel kind of inspired to write about it. And I think, that certainly is true about us and what we do within the marketing team at Zedify. So yeah, for me personally, it just makes it a pleasure and makes it kind of, a pleasure to come to work and easy to write about and get people excited about because you are yourself.
Thank you so much for your time today.
No worries. Good luck with that one. Yeah, please do send it through once you've gone. If it's publicly available, we'd love to see it.